Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, we got a returning guest, somebody I always love having on, and I think he does some great work on his own channel. But before we get to him, we are going to introduce the other rejects with us. We got Brooke. What is going on, Brooke? How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to Joey tonight. As always, you can find me on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast. And be sure if you're in the Florida Fort Myers area, October 18th, I'm going to be speaking at Charlie's Beyond Belief Expo. And the Occult Rejects will also have a booth there. So, even more the reason to come. Thank you for having me tonight.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, we will be right next to her. We got booth 33 and she got 32. I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak for the guys too much, but I was told earlier Nephilim Death Squad hit me up. Top Lobster might be grabbing the table too now, so maybe I'll end up seeing them down there as well. But
Where's
yeah,
my invite? I want to go.
All right, go, man. Yeah, we'll talk to you after the fact.
All right, cool.
But yeah, definitely check it out. Brooke is speaking. She's gonna have a table. Her friends are gonna have a table. We're gonna have a table. It's $10. I mean, if you're in the area, you can walk in and talk shit for $10. I mean, why not? You know. Yeah. So yeah, come check it out. Now we got Tyrone. What is going on, sir? How are you?
What's going on? Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Y'all already know I'm almost up on 24 hours, man. I was reading a book, got stuck in it, can't go to sleep. So you know that I love that. Joey I'm glad to meet you, man. I'm honored to be here and see what you're going to teach me today, because like I said earlier, every day you learn something new. So I'm ready for today to learn something. Everything you can find about me is on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. I have YouTube, Rumble channel, all kinds of things. You just find Rebirth of the Word, you'll find me. I'm also a best-selling author, Journey Through the Origins of History, on Amazon. So you can check that out on there. I appreciate it, Nick. Brooke, what's up? Hey, Joey, let's get it cracking, man.
Speaking of which, real quick, send me a link or something to your YouTube, because I typed you in, but a bunch of other stuff came up about the word. But I want to check out your YouTube, though, and I'm going to order that book for sure.
I put it all right in the private chat, brother. I appreciate that.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us as well, man. I really appreciate it. I know, like, you were here at the earlier show. We did one this morning. He was here, and he made it again. That's what's up. I appreciate it. And now to Joey from Library of the Untold. Again, any guest, and I love the work he does. So please go check it out if you don't know who he is yet.
The last time you hit me up, I was in the middle of this book, this Mysticism and the New Physics. And you guys know Michael Talbot wrote Holographic Universe, which is a good book, but this one blows it out of the water. And this one came out 10 years before that. But around the same time as I was reading this, I was kind of sharing this DMT experience that I had with some of my viewers that kind of was a game changer for me. And this kind of goes into something, but I had this DMT experience that, very roughly speaking, very quickly speaking, these insects, swarms of like elf insects, were building reality. And this is kind of typical, but I went into it like absolutely insisting that I didn't break concentration, because kind of like going into a dream with DMT, often you get lost in the wonderment. You forget that you're actually tripping. So I went in there like concentrating, trying to make sure that I was like, I'm going to get a hold of one of these guys and I'm going to question them. Right. And I've tried this 100 times, but this time it actually worked. And they're swarming around building reality on the other side of our reality. And I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Why are y'all doing this? And one of them, and he was like swinging around and as he was speaking, but he was like, whenever you like what we build, you call us angels. And whenever you don't like what we build, you call us demons. But we're the same things. And we just build whatever you're thinking of. Whatever is in your mind is what we make. And then he's like, why would you ever have a bad thought if you know we got to build these things? And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of what is necessary going into a long time ago. Researching plasma, I found that plasma can create its own dust, and especially in laboratory settings, right? So I was trying to figure out, like, where does the material come from for this plasma to create its own dust. And it turns out nothing. It doesn't need anything because atoms, what make up material, doesn't exist in the first place. It's just empty space. It's just a packet of energy. So plasma creating its own dust is literally making something out of nothing. And to create its own dust, it seemed to be elusive in the labs. Russians were trying to weaponize plasma, but the plasma, and I quote, would not cooperate. So when in the laboratory, if they find dust, they have to scrap everything. So this plasma would seemingly on purpose create dust at the wrong when they needed a particular like result, and they would have to scrap the whole experiment until they eventually gave up on it. So knowing that plasma creates its own dust, I was watching some material by Thunderbolt's project, the electric universe theory, basically. And the leading theory in that beats the hell out of our mechanical universe model currently is that suns they give birth to planets, right? So far, we've been taught in school that planets are caught by suns and they end up in the orbit, which leaves a huge hole, begging the question, where do planets come from in the first place then? But in the electric universe model, suns give birth to planets. And it was like a year of that in the back of my head before I realized that's the same thing. Plasma creating its own dust in labs is the same thing as a star giving birth to a planet, as above, so below. That's the same happening. And as soon as I realized those two things, it hit me pretty much all at once. And it's still like a working theory. I'm still trying to pan it all out. But in the Gnostic Gospels, like the Apocrypha of John, and particularly the Pistis Sophia, Sophia is one of the emanations of the abyss. She's one of the eons. She's ethereal, or plasma, if you will. She gives birth to a demiurgos. And the demiurgos is what's responsible for our material realm. She even insists that like the mineral world, which is conscious, needs to be saved due to this syntax error of Sophia giving birth to this demiurgos, right? And the demiurgos is, of course, like responsible for the physical, tangible universe that we see and can sense, that the rest of which we are blind to is the realm of Sophia. But that realm is here with us right now, just as much as this material realm is. I can't help but think that that's also the same thing as plasma giving birth to dust, or stars giving birth to planets, or Sophia giving birth to the demiurgos. And when you look at all three of those, it ties directly to the Taoist concepts of Zen. And the nada and bindu of Zen literature is literally a particle and a wave of our understanding. And if you can imagine, pretty much from there, that umbrella opens up to so much that I'm trying to, at this point, keep up with myself, because trying to find the little nuggets of hard evidence for this is so elusive that it can be really aggravating.
Well, one thing I definitely think is that when it comes to occultism and esotericism, there's a lot of science behind it.
Right.
You know, it wouldn't make sense to people because you think this stuff is old and that, you know, they were playing with twigs at that time and just throwing shit in the sand, you know, but it wasn't like that.
Right.
So in my opinion, it's like hard to even it's impossible because, you know, they were just monkeys, you know, banging things around.
That's the way we think. Right.
Yeah. But like, I don't think that's the case. And I mean, even the fact, I mean, we have plasma in our blood. And I just, even with that, I mean, start thinking about like, what is even plasma? You know, when I had you know, I've mentioned on the show a few times that I think I've crossed the abyss, or I've had a magical experience. And I, at one point, I was kind of abusing the situation, I guess, and did it like 3 times in a week. And I wasn't feeling too good. Something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I went to the hospital because I actually didn't feel good, man. Like I literally, my eyesight was getting fucked up. I felt like my head was going to pop. I felt like I had electricity going up and down my legs. I was like, oh, something the fuck is wrong here, man. So I went there. I didn't really even know what to tell them. I mean, eventually I told 2 of the doctors the truth, but at first I was just like, I don't feel good, blah, blah, blah. Oh, my eyes were fucked up. My one pupil was blown out. One was fucking tiny. Like I've said that before. Every time I fuck with magic, my one pupil gets big and my other one gets small. I had that going. They didn't know what the fuck that was. Eventually, they didn't know what the hell was wrong with my eyes. They didn't understand the head problems too. They tossed that up to migraines that I've never had before, and I never took the medicine. I was like, it's not migraines, but whatever. They said I had a blood issue that just seemed to pop up, and they did say that sometimes people get this in their older age. They don't even know why, and you'll just have to go every once a month and get like a bag of blood to thin you out. But basically, what they were saying is that my blood was really thick, and the hemoglobin level was instead of 13 or 14 was jacked up to like 19.6.
Damn.
And something to do in there with all that plasma does come up.
Yeah.
So I have wondered, like, what, I mean, technically that's kind of like light in a sense.
Yeah. I feel like, so in the Gnostic Gospels, Sophia imbues her creation with her own divine light, which under many names, ether, plasma, prana, Shakti, right? Pity is the wrong word, but she sees that there are beings in this realm that reflect her realm, the pleroma. And she feels like it's not fair for these beings to remain animals. So she imbues them with her life force or her light, which I feel like the terminology that they used back then are the same as ours that we have today. And I think that we are a reflection of Sophia, literally the mother of God. And now I don't know exactly the relationship of plasma in blood to plasma in TVs, plasma in space, the Korolevsky clouds. I think that plasma is kind of an umbrella term for a lot of different things that we can't see. But if you condense it enough and you pocket it enough, it becomes visible, like ball lightning, regular lightning, fire, things like that. When you get plasma excited, it does crazy things. And I wonder if, like, Kundalini, for example, is a form of plasma, because what we have going on within us is what the universe has going on. I mean, that's almost self-explanatory. We are the universe experiencing itself. So the idea that inanimate matter became living matter, to me, is so absurd that it doesn't make any sense. There has to be some kind of reflection of the above. In fact, in the Pistis Sophia, it uses the word reflection. It says I see it there. It says that Sophia reflected herself into the murky depths, and that's how we are animate right now. So the blood seems to be the key there. And that's where it gets kind of confusing, because DNA is a code that we have not figured out yet. And there's a whole bunch of so-called junk in there that we just can't seem to read. And that's why we call it junk, by the way, is because we can't figure it out.
So would you say that you kind of believe that plasma is a form of consciousness, or that it has its own consciousness? Because I've often wondered that. And then I know with some of the drones that we were seeing in New Jersey, air quotes on drones, I think there were a couple of different things happening there. But at some point, some people recorded what they described as plasma in the sky, and it was very intelligent, and it did have this like consciousness to it. So it's interesting that you say, oh, when they got to a specific part in the experiment, then it starts producing this dust. It's almost like there is some level of intelligence there.
Like on purpose. Not only do I think that plasma is a vehicle for consciousness, but I think that it is the epitome of vehicular consciousness, because I think that consciousness varies in degree depending on density. And so this is something that is almost, again, also self-explanatory if you really think about it enough. But there's not enough mainstream science looking into it to actually verify anything. But think about density versus consciousness, right? Just an easy example would be how light and spongy our brain is compared to bone. So if you look at stories of the rainbow body, the Zen masters, whenever they became a particular level of awareness, like a particular level of consciousness, of sentient awareness, they would develop the rainbow body, where the atoms in their vehicle were no longer hard and heavy material anymore. They were etheric beings. And the idea of etheric beings goes back, I mean, as long as history does. They used to take on statues in Sumeria to be spoken with human beings. I feel like plasma, being the least dense of our 4 states of matter, would, because look what dusty complex plasmas are, right? They're not atoms. They're made out of individual particles. They're basically pro-charged particles that have not become heavy enough to accumulate into atoms. So the complexity of those goes way beyond anything that the neurons in the brain are. So to say that plasmas can retain memory is already done. We have technology doing that now. To say that plasma can think, that's already done, because we're also utilizing that with AI today. The last step we have to confront is the hardest one, but also I think self-evident. It's that plasma can do things on purpose, and it can do things with intention, and it has free will. Here's the problem, though. Its intentions are going to be so utterly abstract from what we are used to that it won't make sense to us. So look how limited we are in how we live. No matter how complex human life is, we have one primary goal: to resist pain. So we need to eat, and we have to eat suffering, by the way, to sustain ourselves. Something has to die for us to eat. That's an important thing to remember. So if etherical beings need to eat, they have to eat suffering too. This is the snake eating its tail. This is the cycle of samsara. That's just the way it sucks, but that's the way it is. Something has to die for us to eat. So if you think about, if it's conscious, it's going to feed on other forms of consciousness. And that sounds negative, but it might not be if we just kind of accept our place in the food chain. This is where it gets really tricky, though, because people will do anything, rather than confront themselves being in the middle of the food chain rather than at the top of it. And being at the top of the food chain is honestly what's held us back scientifically and spiritually for thousands of years. That's my.
Hey, let me ask you something. Do you know who Tiamat is? Because you mentioned the Sumerians. So
Tiamat would be the dragon, the water dragon of Sumerian mythology. Yeah, defeated by Marduk.
Yep.
I think that story too might be just one of the many retellings of what we're looking at. I've been siding with the Gnostic literature lately, but that's just kind of this week's flavor, because the same story is told in mythology. I mean, so speaking of plasma and water beings, Tiamat and whatnot, I mean, in Arabic culture, we have jinn, spelled with a D. And they say that's where the genie comes from, right? So these beings are obviously powerful. They have intentions and complexities that we can't even imagine. So to get into their heads is going to be impossible. But like King Solomon did, we can harness that power. I don't know how. Nick might be able to teach us how if he can resist going to the hospital for a couple of months with the magic there. But that's something I don't ever touch. But they exist, and more importantly, we can become that before we die. That's the idea of the rainbow body in Tibetan literature, is that's kind of the ultimate attainment. Well, of course, look at Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ came back after his resurrection, the first dude he saw was Paul. Paul didn't recognize him. Paul saw a luminous vapor. Dude, I mean, how many other cultures have to mention this idea of plasmatic sentience before science gets their shit together and says maybe life forms are not just inhibited to the human vehicle. And maybe this human vehicle is just one of many stops that we've got to make, you know, along the way with our own personal journeys that, again, like plasmatic sentience, might be so complex that we have no idea what the end game is. People talk about it being a school. People talk about it, you know, learning lessons or whatever. Some people say that there's a soul recycler and we are a slave to a reptilian species. I don't know which of these is correct, but it might be so complex that we ain't gonna know about it until we shed the skin, you know?
I agree with that. You'll get some answers when you shed the skin for sure. Man, it might be answers you don't want either. Keep that in mind.
Dude,
Yeah, I was gonna say that it might not be answers you want. You might
Well, you weren't ready for it.
Yeah, definitely
scares
probably
me.
more than likely that you ain't ready for it. You definitely right about that.
Dude, I've been having trouble lately with the whole concept of the black cube soul recycler because, well, first of all, I accidentally put a huge dent into that boat right off the bat with my YouTube career, but you know, people took it more and more literally. But the idea that we are recycled not on our own accord is very disturbing. And if there's anything, you know, these governments talk about UFO disclosure and alien intelligence. They say, no, we can't disclose anything because humanity will go into a chaos. And then one quickly retorts with, dude, no, you've been saying aliens are in the ocean. You've been saying Atlas 3 is an alien. No one gives a fuck anymore. No one cares. We can handle it. Give it to us. But then they're like, no, you're not ready for it. What else could it be? But I digress because it's
tapping into your inner God and doing shit that they don't want you to do, like probably like, you know, consciously leaving your body, which you can do astral projection.
Yeah.
You can you know, train your body to control your dreams, which would be lucid dreaming. You know, I think about that a lot too. Like, okay, as much money as NASA and us taxpayers pay to NASA and all these government officials to look for life outside of Earth, we fail to look for new species and life within Earth, meaning that we know more, or this is what they say scientifically. I'm not saying this is what they say. They say we know more about our space than we know about our own oceans.
Right.
Now, you mentioned something about like what we would describe as USOs. Now, I have been saying this for almost 5 years now. The Anuna / the Anunnaki do not come from a planet named Nibiru. Okay, if you read their actual text for themselves, if you go to the Cuneiform Culture Handbook, if you go to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, if you go to the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative, it literally says they come from the sea. That's why Enki was the ruler of the Abzu, ruler of either what is known as fresh water or the ocean. Literally, he came from the waters to give humanity knowledge.
Right.
That's why he's depicted as a fish god.
Right.
Because when you're doing language in its most simplest form, in the most easiest way for somebody to understand it, you're going to depict it so somebody can understand it. So if somebody says, "Hey, I got a picture of a guy in a fish suit," what would that represent? Well, he has to be in control of water. There's depictions of him with water streams coming out from his shoulders.
Yeah.
This was a water god.
Right.
This is the God that actually created humans according to the Sumerian, Akkadians, every Mesopotamian, and even the Babylonians, the Bible, the Holy Bible itself. Enki is supposedly the individual who created humans. Now, Enki in the Bible is not Enki. He's a different God. God, of course, G-O-D with a capital G. But the thing is that what's also amazing about this is the fact that the text actually says these individuals come from the water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, water has been a sustaining part of our life forever, right? The Garden of Eden had the most, tasteful, beautiful water in the world, right? It was for fertility, agriculture, everything we do has water around it. Every civilization that started around 3200 BC of what we call modern academic science with their, radiocarbon dating and stuff like that, they say civilization started around 3200 BC, but we know there's also civilizations that are underwater. So we know that there are older ones, right? We just can't date those right now. And it's just amazing to me that You know, we done got to the point where people believe one person in their text versus what's actually written in the text. If you're like, and I say Zechariah Sitchin has told people that the Anunnaki came from a planet named Nibiru since 1976. Since 1976, people have been believing that same shit.
Right.
When we have text that says otherwise, literally.
You know, I tackled this a while back, and I'm glad you said it. Zechariah Sitchin was not a translator, and nor did he do justice to those texts. And he has created so many Billy Carsons ever since then, and it's a problem. It's all these David Wilcox and all these guys. They just repeat what Zechariah Sitchin said, and he didn't know what the fuck he was
Jordan
doing.
Max.
Dude, he was a sci-fi writer, and yeah, so. But you're right about the oceans, though, because the Enki, the same story as Dagon, and also there's no surprise that the Dogon tribe are called the Dogon. They talk about.
I was going to go there too.
Yeah.
I actually did a podcast discussion with Larry Scranton, who actually wrote the book, The Science of the Doggone.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, you know, and it's just so amazing that people have been blinded by Zechariah Sitchin, and Billy Carson took that Olympic torch and rode with it and didn't stop at all. And because I'm telling you, I don't understand. It's money, is the views, and I don't understand it. That's one thing that I can understand. It's okay to want money. If you want that Lexus, that Mercedes, go ahead and get it. I got a Chevy Silverado in the driveway. I make $1 million. I'm still gonna have a Chevy Silverado in the driveway because I love trucks, right? So that shit is not going to change. My point is that people are so into showing off, you know, what they have. Okay, if your knowledge is as great as you can, then do what I do. Go grab the fucking book and show me where it says it at. Show me which text says what you said, and then I can believe what you say. Until then, I'm gonna go off the person that says they can translate it. Not only that, I take it one step further. I am actually teaching myself Sumerian cuneiform. So now you got to teach. Now you got to tell me how wrong I am, and this is going to be a discussion that me and you are going to have. You know, either on stream or face to face, but you just can't put it in a couple of sentences. Oh, you're wrong. No, the fuck I'm not. I know what I did. I know what I read. I know what I researched. Dude, show me otherwise, please.
When you go back to the original sources, you become a force to be reckoned with. And that's extremely admirable, by the way, because not to get off on a tangent here, but we are living in this realm of shorts, reels, and TikToks that are just a copy of a copy of a copy. And it drives me.
It's repetitive shit that I remember from 12, 15 years ago when I first got into this shit. I'm like, yo, you were just repeating what somebody said 15 years ago on YouTube.
And
using AI to help on top of that. That's why I created a whole new Rumble account, and I'm visiting all these museums around in Americas, or as much as I can around the world, and actually videotaping. Because you know, when people do documentaries, it's a 45, 50-minute documentary. You know they recorded at least 6 hours of fucking material, and you only picked 45 minutes. And then when you show pictures of the artifacts that you're showing, you repeat those same fucking artifacts over and over and over again in the same show. Literally, you don't show you went to a museum, I guarantee you there's at least 1,000 items in there. Why aren't you only showing five of them? It doesn't make sense to me. And it's because they want that quick overturn of, you know, the money, the views, and all this, that. But what are you really teaching? Because now those 5 artifacts that you showed me, those probably don't mean shit to me. There's probably more cool stuff than what you showed me. Show me everything. And that's why I'm recording and going through these places and actually, you know, seeing this stuff, because I've actually had Nick actually had guests on here that talked about the skulls and bones, right? I found artifacts at a military army base of Nazi memorabilia that had skulls and bones within them. So now that makes you think, was these Nazis at Yale too? Were they, because you know where skulls and bones come from, right? So were they participating over there at Yale? Come on, it makes you think about it, right? So,
well, you know, look where NASA came from, right?
They had some scientists over there.
Well, I do have a question. So you kind of touched on it, and I don't know if maybe that's what you were talking about today, but the black cube recycled, not on our own accord. What did you mean by that?
So roughly 1 million years ago when I started my channel, which is actually 2 years ago, but it seems, you know, I made a video called Hex of Saturn, the lore of the black cube. And I guess that one is really what catapulted me in the YouTube world or whatever. It's still, I don't understand what I did in that video, but it is beyond like quadruple any other video I have in views and whatever. And it was just received really well. Here's the thing. I was observing that humans build in cubes, and that alchemically the human body is seen as a cube, right? So we used to be triangles, and then before that we were circles, right? But now we build in cubes. And you know, the sword of Excalibur has to be pulled out of the stone cube. And alchemical, Gnostic, it's always circle is the divine realms and the cube is the physical realm. So I ran with that as a symbolic metaphor for thinking outside the box. That was the idea of the entire video. And then I speculated about the cross, Jesus Christ. If you've ever been in grade school and you built a cube, you have to cut it out of a flat 2D cross first, and then you have to fold up the cross. So I speculated that that might have had a connection there, because Jesus left the cube, so to speak, leaving behind his tangible body, right? And there's a whole lot more to it than that, including the flea experiment, where fleas would not jump out of a jar if their parents had a lid on them. So if one flea was to be like, guys, we can jump out of this jar, the other fleas would be like, crucify him, you know, we'll do whatever you got to do. So that was my black cube kind of metaphor. And tying it to Saturn was because ancient people often associated the hexagon, which is a 2D cube, with Saturn. So it all kind of tied together, right? Dude, next thing I know, there's Reddit forums, there's Discord forums, there's Y-Files did a damn episode called The Black Cube. And there was lines from that episode, from my episode, which God love them. I love AJ and Hecklefish. They're wonderful. But anyway, they took it and they made it literal. They said there's a black cube machine that recycles our soul and sends us right back down to earth. And that's not at all what I had intended, but it got taken that way. However, ever since then, I've kind of ran into things that have bugged me about it, and not in a discarded way, but in a strange way. So like in these Buddhist mandalas, right? Oftentimes there's a very sinister creature with its fangs hanging up over the square, and he's encompassing the whole wheel of samsara as if he owns the damn thing. And then you'll have like a picture of Siddhartha, the Buddha, pointing to the moon. And then he'll say like, don't look at my finger when I point to the moon. I want you to look at the moon. And that took me down a rabbit hole of like David Icke, who, by the way, did all of this black cube stuff, Saturn stuff, 10, 20 years before I even touched on it, right? So now you got a grain of salt with David Icke, of course, but I love the guy. I think he's authentic. I don't think he's selling.
I think he does well on.
Yeah, I don't think he's not a sellout. He's not doing anything for money. He's just, whatever he thinks is going on is what he's reporting, and that's what I like. I don't know if he's correct or not, but I
actually do think he crossed the abyss.
He what?
I actually do believe he had that experience, that crossing that abyss experience. I actually believe it. By the way, he talks, certain words that he uses, and the way he dresses.
Right.
I don't doubt it.
I don't find David Icke to be a liar at all. And you can tell some of these guys when they're lying, dude. I mean, you've seen like David Wilcock speak, and you can just tell. You can just, it's body language.
That dude lost it, man. That dude lost it. David Wilcox, that dude lost it, man. I don't know what the fuck he be talking about.
Never liked him in the first place, man. And I don't know, you can tell some of these guys, dude. I was railing against Billy Carson on my channel way before the thing happened to him recently. And it was almost a breath of fresh air when that happened, because people were calling me racist for not liking Billy Carson. I'm like, dude, it ain't like that. But besides that, so Icke, way before I touched on the subject, talked about Saturn being the head archon, which is not in the Gnostic Gospels. It says that Saturn is the outer limits of our physical, tangible reality. So in a way, it governs and dictates the way physical matter runs. Therefore, it becomes an emblem for time. And David Icke took this more literally and said that it's like a satellite dish that controls our simulation that is amplified by the moon and causes us to only see this particular reality by inhibiting our junk DNA down to the few DNA strands that we do use. Therefore, we cannot realize certain things that these Zen masters can. And in order for that to be feasible, any of that to be feasible, would take one thing, which is basically alien overlords. And that it gets a little uncomfortable because we want to think that aliens would be like guides to us. But if you think about what we said earlier, that everything needs to eat. And if you're not a tangible physical being, you still have to eat something. And that what you would eat would be etheric matter, some kind of sentience, some kind of consciousness. And it's kind of been bugging me ever since, because what these Eastern mystics are always getting at about meditation, they tell you to calm the mind. They're like, you have to silence the waters within. There's often hints that nothing can digest you if your thoughts are quiet enough. You become low on the radar. And these guys would go into the Lao Tzu would go into the mountains to meditate, not because he wanted to leave society for obvious reasons, as some people might, but he needed to change the reality structure of our mental format. Because the Eastern mystics would say that the reality that we perceive is not from one person imagining reality, or else this would be Tower of Babel chaos. It takes the entire collected consciousness of humanity to create a single reality. So we are like children in the Bhagavad Gita, with a chariot that's going to go off the cliff because someone threw an apple and the horses are going to chase it. So you have to have that driver there to keep the horses going in a straight line, because human beings are new. We're brand new. We're children, and we will choose power over peace any day, anytime, whether we admit it or not. So what they wanted to get at was Lao Tzu would leave society, go up in the mountains, and he would separate himself from that collected consciousness that creates the reality structure and augment it manually by himself, because nobody else was getting it. There was a certain level of strangeness and fear within that I find to be extremely careful with, because they didn't want to come out and say everything. There was haikus and symbolism and all that stuff. But if you look at the idea of archons and Loosh, are you guys familiar with this whole Loosh idea?
Yes.
Okay, so I have an idea about that. Loosh is they say that they're feeding off of our suffering, and I think that's an extremely oversimplified and almost dogmatic way to look at it. I think the best way to look at Loosh is like, let's say you work with 4 other people, and one day you have a dentist appointment, you can't make it to work, so those 3 people have to bring in a 4th person to take your place, right? Deep down inside, whether you admit it or not, you don't want your coworkers to have the best, smoothest day ever, because that's going to look bad on you. Even though you want what's best for everybody, you don't want it to go extremely smoothly, because if it's a little spicy there without you, that's good for you. That's what Loosh is. Now, as above, so below, could that be happening in the above realms as well? Very much possibly, but that's not the point. The point is, if we can deal with that form of Loosh that I just mentioned within us, this form of Loosh goes away. And that's what the Zen masters were getting at. You look within and you solve those problems within. Whatever's going on out there that you're worried about them harvesting our souls, doesn't matter anymore. If we figure it out down here, it ripples into the cosmos, and that becomes a much bigger picture. And according to Enoch, if we are to realize that simple fact, it sets free the fallen angels that fell with us. These fallen angels that might be equated to what you were saying earlier about Enki and or Lucifer or Prometheus. These beings that were religions cast down as well as villains, as devils, as demons, when really they were giving us fire, giving us knowledge, giving us boats, giving us technology. That seems like good guy stuff to me. But one thing that they had in common with us, they had a dire fear of God. So why would anybody fear God? Why, especially beings who lived with God before the worlds were made? Why would they have this fear of God? The only thing I can think of is that he ain't, and that the Gnostic Gospels might be hinting at something much bigger. That the Old Testament God might have been a demiurgos, and all of us are running in this rat race to serve him. That's why he's always talking about worship me, not other gods. The first 3 commandments are really weird.
Because he's a jealous guy, remember?
Right. Why would you be jealous if you were the monad? If there was nothing else except for you and we lived within you, what is there to be jealous of? If we were to worship another God, it's within
bro,
you.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And I'm sorry to interrupt you because I say that too. Why would you be a jealous God? What would another God be able to do to have other people worship?
God, it'd be the same God.
Exactly. See, that's why I don't understand why people say that shit, because it literally says in the Bible that his name is a jealous and he's a jealous God. So what do people do when they're jealous? They usually cause harm to somebody or some people when they're jealous.
Look at Job.
Jealousy causes harm. Yeah. So you got it, man. You own it, man. I like this shit, yo. This dude's on it. He on it like white on rice.
I'm on it like white on my scalp, man. Fucking fresh shaved today. But dude, no, it's that I don't like the idea. That's the problem. I don't like it. Whenever I did Glitch in the Halo, every sentence that I typed, I hated it. And I had to cover the book of Job. Carl Jung said that his book Answer to Job, which covers that whole story, is the one book that he wouldn't revise in any way, shape, or form. So I had to cover the damn thing. And the whole time I'm just like, I hate this, because I pray to Jesus. I pray to Jesus Christ. And in my naive mind, I'm thinking that Jesus Christ is a reflection of Yahweh, of the Old Testament God. The more I started reading these Gnostic Gospels, dude, I think he was warning people that that's not the case. Look who Jesus disliked the most: the Pharisees, people who worship Yahweh. That's where you get really tricky. Jesus seems to be one of these Zen masters that told us to look within instead of worshiping this God, because in all these mythologies, God's first thing after creating humans is like, sing songs to me and don't stop doing that. Hopi mythology, the gods are like, I swear to God, if you stop singing songs to me, I'm flooding this bitch. That is a weird thing to demand of your children.
Shit, hell, you skipped that. You skipped Abraham and killing his son, man. Come on, man. He manipulated his son and lied to his son. Dude. Say, hey, let's go to the mountain, and then he ain't tell him that, hey, I'm gonna sacrifice your ass when we get up there because God told me to. What kind of shit is that, man? Like, that's crazy. Right.
The Christians have a million different ways to splice that, saying that he gave Job back more children when he was done. Job didn't want more children. He wanted his children, you know? And then people say it's a metaphor. That's fine too. But then what's the moral of the story? Keep believing in something that kicks you in the dick 24/7? I don't like it. So I can't help but think that the Zen masters were saying the same thing as the Gnostics were. So it's difficult and it's uncomfortable, because I don't want to get smited, you know, but
Well, I love how you talk about looking within. I'm a firm believer in being the change that you want to see in the world. If you want it to be a more peaceful world, a happier world,
Yeah.
then you need to try to embody those things yourself and kind of like lead by example. I'm really into that. And it's interesting you talked about the Zen masters going to the mountains because I do a lot of camping and stuff like that. And I really feel like that's where I can almost get into my meditative space. And I think when you strip away the technology, you strip away the noise, like you said, kind of our societal identity that we take on, and you're just bare with nature. I think it has a way of rewiring our brains back to kind of how they're supposed to be. And I always feel like I step away with more knowledge than kind of what I
Yeah.
came in with.
It's an unspoken knowledge that
Yeah.
it can't be put into words. And I work with guys in construction who they would make fun of meditation all day, but then they talk about, man, when I'm out there hunting up in my tree stand with my gun, just silence. They don't even have to get a deer. They're like, that's where I'm truly happy. I'm like, bitch, you're meditating. That's exactly what that is. And that being with nature is is uh is parallel to evading the simulation, a simulacra. Because if you think about what is a simulation, right? Everyone wants to be sci-fi with this shit, but it don't have to be. The definition of a simulacra, let me get this out real quick. So I've been down this rabbit hole lately, and I recommend it to anybody who's curious about anything paranormal or just society in general, but it's called simulacra and simulation. The way I came across this was in the movie The Matrix. Whenever Neo answers the phone, this book is just kind of hidden in one, like 3 frames, you know, as a little hint. So I picked it up, and it talks about what a simulacra is a copy of a copy that no longer has an original. So being with nature is the best way to shed yourself of all simulacra. So for example, Disneyland. So once upon a time, there were castles. We don't really know what these castles were used for. Some say that they harvested electromagnetic energy. You know, they had these castles, they were filled up with different amounts of material, as if like wine glasses, they'd give a different pitch, you know. But then those castles became mythology. The mythology being, you know, that if you want the treasure, you have to defeat the serpent, right? If you want the woman in the top of the tower, you have to go through the tower, through that serpent, right? There's no going around it. That's the mythology. And then mythology got replaced with fairy tales, which were dark. But then fairy tales became Disney movies. All along the way, there's castles. And then there's Disneyland, where we have castles made out of foam. And then, so we're already far removed from what castles were. But then if you go to this Disneyland gift shop, you can get a keychain with it's a little castle. By the time, if you took this keychain and you held it up to somebody now or 1,000 years for whatever, this thing came from something that we have no idea what it is. It is a simulacra now. It is a copy of a copy that no longer has an original. So this book talks about the dangers of living with. So Disneyland is just an example. The book is what the book's getting at is that we live in a simulacra. The news, look at the news. The news used to be a dude, a reporter, or a journalist would go out into the world and then find things and then come back and tell the news. It's not like that anymore. The news is now reporting on what the last news network said, and they're reporting on whatever the last news network said. They're just repeating whatever the last news. So that's becoming a simulacra too. So we're living in an egregore, a living simulacra that is alive and kicking and is ready to destroy us at any moment it gets. What we have, everything we have is a copy of a copy that no longer has an original. We are completely detached from our original way of living in trees. What if I just want to live in a tree? It's illegal. So we are punished for getting rid of our simulacras. So and this is the damnedest thing about it is I want to sit in a creek and feel the cold water, right? You know, my creek right now outside of my house is poisoned. Amarin poisoned my creek. And they put a letter on my door saying, don't drink your water. We don't know when it happened, but back off the water for a while. It's radioactive. It's about as, if you let it, it's depressing, dude. But not only are we completely detached from nature, but for me, at least over here, it's become dangerous to do so.
Hey, not only you got to stay away from that radioactive water, you got to stay away from that radioactive shrimp too, man. You know,
radioactive shrimp, dude. Yeah. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, man. I love seafood.
I know, right? Like shit, man. Like it's already in the Bible that you can't eat it. Now they make it radioactive. They definitely don't want you to touch it, man.
What is it about shrimp? Maybe that awakens the pineal gland or something like that, and awakens.
Hey, you might be on to something.
Eat enough krill or whatever, you'd be as smart as a whale. Maybe, I don't know. But I wanted to say something else about the smoker, but what was it? I go off on tangents, man. And
hey, that's the best way to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in while you thinking it.
Yeah.
You know, I like this stuff because, you know, a lot of there's always this idea that this physical life that we're living right now is not the only life. You know, they say a lot of people live their lives again or relive their lives in their dreams. You know, you got the Akashic records, you got astral projection, lucid dreaming and stuff like that. Some people spend more time sleeping than they actually do awake. So where are they really living their full life at? Are they living their full life in the sleep mind state, or are they living their full life in the physical state? You know, and everybody's, from what I've read and researched and a lot of people that I've talked to, there's something other than us, right? So obviously there's something out there that's greater than us. If you don't have to believe in the God in the Bible to believe that there's something more powerful, stronger, and more intelligent and better than you in this universe, right?
Yeah.
This universe, they say, is made up of, you know, billions and billions of galaxies, along with planets and stars and moons and all this other stuff, right? And if I go by mathematics, right, it only makes sense for there to be a 1% out there, right? And which means that there's something that's going to be an anomaly out there, right? There's something that's not going to be normal to us, right? So I absolutely believe that there's things out there other than ourselves. Plus, I've had my own experiences too. When I was a little kid, I told a story before, Nick, on your show when I talked about how my mom seen a figure over my crib when I was a little baby. And then when I got wounded in Afghanistan and my heart stopped and I was officially dead, I had seen two figures, right? One told me it was time to go. Another one told me it wasn't time to go. So I've had my own experiences along with my own understanding of what I've read, right? Because I've read a lot about, you know, demons, ghosts, afterlife, you know, so on and so forth. Matter of fact, I learned about astral projection when I got diagnosed with sleep paralysis. Okay, because I was having a problem. I was always having these issues after I was wounded in Afghanistan for like a year straight, almost every single day, 365 days. I was experiencing where I couldn't move. Like I was literally, I could see everything, I can hear everything, I could taste everything, but I couldn't move. And I was frightened because I would always see these figures, but because I was wounded in Afghanistan and because I had severe PTSD and I seen some fucked up shit out there in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, it's only normal for a soldier to see, you know, dead bodies and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Things that might be not normal to the normal eye, right? It's normal because of the brain. You know, I also have I have an MTBI, moderate traumatic brain injury. So it's just normal for me to think that way. But then I started wondering and thinking more to myself. I was like, this shit ain't normal. Like I've watched movies that talk about this. Matter of fact, one of my favorite movies is Freddy Krueger. I think it's Freddy's Dead or Freddy, something like that. I can remember where they was controlling their dreams. It wasn't Freddy's. Yeah, it was that one and another one. They were controlling their dreams or trying to control their dreams. And they were practicing astral projection and stuff like that. That's where I learned it from. That's where I actually remembered it first from. Yeah. And as I got older, you know, I was like, why in the fuck am I seeing these crazy things? I know what I've seen out there in Iraq and Afghanistan. What I'm seeing in the dark is not the same. I know this is not the same. Right. And so I started doing some more research on astral projection and stuff like that. And I found out most people learn about astral projection when they get diagnosed with sleep paralysis because they're trying to figure out what is going on. And that's when I learned about astral projection from my sleep paralysis. Then I learned about lucid dreaming because one of my doctors told me, well, why don't you try to control your dreams? You know, you're always having these crazy dreams from over there and this, that, and the third. And I was like, how the fuck do you do that? Right. So, you know what I'm saying? And he, and the person wasn't intelligent enough. They didn't know about lucid dreaming or nothing, because when I came back and told them what I researched, you know, they put in my medical records that I was more crazier than I thought, you know what I'm saying? Or they thought, right.
Anything outside the box, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And I researched it and I was like, okay, you know, and this is one of the things that I've learned about lucid dreaming. If you're trying to understand your way of understanding on how to control your dreams, or if you're lucid dreaming or not, the one thing you should always do is take a bracelet, a yarn, a colored yarn, whatever your favorite color is, put it on your wrist, right? Set your alarm for at least 2 weeks straight, or a month, or however, every day at the same time for an hour. And when that alarm goes off, you look at it.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and you look at it. When you get into your dreamlike state, your REM state or whatever, when you're dreaming, it automatically consciously decides to, hey, let me check to see if I'm dreaming.
Right.
If you see it, that means that you're not lucid dreaming, that you're in a physical state. If you don't see it, you're in your lucid dreaming, and that's when you can start controlling what you want to see.
Hold on.
That's huge.
I have to ask really quick. So does that mean like that's how you trained yourself to lucid
That's how I
dream?
trained myself. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow.
That's literally wonderful, because I know about the wake back to sleep method, which I have done, but that seems a lot more practical, because that's something that you have to cognitively do.
Yeah, you have to make that conscious decision and be like, oh, my alarm's off. Let me look at my wrist. And you're like, oh, okay. And when you don't see it no more, you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, I'm dreaming. Now let's go fuck some shit up.
You're tapped in, right? Well, see, what's amazing about that is, according to the Vajrayana, that's the key to break out of the cycle of samsara, to actually the matrix, whatever it's called now, is to lucid dream. Not that lucid dreaming gets you out of the matrix, but that it's training for death, so that when the time comes, this is repeated by the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Vajrayana Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists. They all talk about the
I Ching.
Yeah. They say if you can, it's not just lucid dreaming that is their sleep yoga, so to speak. I don't want to misquote this, but they talk about the best way to train yourself is to stay cognitive going into and out of sleep, which is probably the hardest part about it, to maintain awareness going into sleep. You know, I've never been able to do that, but they talk about, like, that's the key right there. If you can do that, you are untouchable as an etheric form. Whenever you leave your body at death and you start, you know, the Mara is going to tempt you, or these I forgot the name of the animalistic dude, looks like a bear with 6 arms, which is just a metaphor, of course, but there's rage demons, temptation goddesses, that they're all going to try to get you to go to the bright light. That's going to bring you right back where you started. Whereas they say your goal is to go into the clear light. You won't notice it because it's clear. The whole idea there is to maintain your awareness whenever you're crossing over, so that you can compute, that nothing can fool you. Because when you're dreaming, you don't know you're dreaming. So when you die, you're not going to know that you're dead. So apparently, after a lifetime of sleep yoga, training yourself to stay coherent, whenever you die, it's not going to be an issue for you. Is the whole idea there. Trying to find the part.
Yeah, you're supposed to lose that fear of death. That's why they train. That's why in the ancient times, I believe they trained people to meditate. Because it was preparing them for death. You know, because you know you're going to be. And it's so crazy that you say it like that, because a lot of people don't really understand that, the fact that, you know, these ancient people were teaching us how to prepare for death.
Right.
Literally, their whole entire lives were teaching us how to prepare for death and to be in our own godlike abilities in this physical form. That's why, you know, it's like the superhero movies and shows. Everybody has their own qualities, their own specialty, right? You know, Superman can fly faster and move faster than a speeding bullet, but guess what? Batman can counter that shit by shooting his ass with what? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's amazing that everybody has their own specialty, their own godlike. As a matter of fact, there's actually a show called Superhumans by Stan Lee. And he used to go around the world and interview people who had like what we would call godlike features. Like there was a guy that could sustain electricity and never get electrocuted. He could transfer electricity to a light bulb or to a pot or something like that. If he just touched something else, that like an electrical wire or something like that. There was the contortionist, was the guy that was the narrator. You know, you had the human calculator, the guy that can do mathematics faster than somebody plugging the numbers into a calculator, like thinking like there's people.
I saw that recently pop up on my feed.
Yeah. And it's crazy because we're in 2025 with people that doing this stuff. Now imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago without this technology, the abilities that people people harnessing electricity from lightning, right? I mean, just think about that for a second, right? Somebody gets struck with lightning, you see it in the field because you're farming, you're doing your duties, and you see your partner over there get struck by lightning. He gets up and he's like, there's nothing wrong with me. And now you consider him the thunder god, the lightning god, right?
Right.
Because every time he steps in the field, there's lightning nearby, right? There's another thing. For me, for instance, ever since I was wounded in Afghanistan, I have this thing where I can tell when it's about to rain. My body gets really, really tired. I've been, it's crazy because when rain comes by, I know when I can feel it. Like you heard the old school people saying, "Oh, my corns are acting up," or "My bunions are acting up. It's about to rain," or some shit like that. I feel it by being tired. Like I'm really tired. I get really, really, really tired. About 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour later, it starts raining and pouring. I was like, I knew it was going to rain. And as soon as it's done, I'm back to being hyper. Like I was telling you guys, I've been up since like 8 o'clock last night. I don't really sleep because of my PTSD and shit like that. And I actually was diagnosed with narcolepsy. So it's kind of funny too about that. I don't have the narcolepsy, you know, from the movie, what's that movie? Deuce Bigelow, when the chick kept falling asleep and he had to tie her hair up back to the nail so she wouldn't hit her head in the soup or something. I don't have that type of narcolepsy. I just get really sleepy. And I started noticing that I can tell my tiredness, whether it's from my condition or if it's from, you know, the weather. And I'm serious, it's really crazy. And that's what I also learned about dowsing because of that, you know, the sticks where you can go check for water and shit like that. I also learned about that. So, you know, we all have our own abilities for everything. We know we have our own ways of doing things. It's not until we start working together when all those abilities come out together. That's why usually when somebody's running a one-man show, the show is not really entertaining, but you add a couple of more people to it, the shit starts getting entertaining because of the personalities and everything else. And you don't have to rely on listening to one person. You can hear everybody's perspective. You're bringing everybody together to paint a picture, to understand everything that's around us. And a lot of times you'll get the good people that you'll know that can help with that. And then you'll find the people who smelling rain. That's what I'm saying. Just like Jessica said, it's like I can taste it. Like tasting the rain when it comes. It's like, what the fuck? And, you know, I don't know, maybe, I mean, think about how that would help people, you know, back in the ancient times, you know, fish gods, you know, a god like Jesus, he fed, you know, thousands of people with a couple of fish and some bread, right? Well, let's put that into an allegorical type of understanding. Well, he went out there to fish 3 different times and he caught enough fish those 3 times. If somebody can catch fish to the point where they can feed their whole tribe, their whole community, they're going to be known as a fish god. Anybody that can, you know, create fire with ease, they're going to be known as a fire god. Somebody who can, you know, sacrifice animals without getting queasy and scared and all this and providing meat for the community, they're going to be known as what? A sacrificer. Right? Somebody's going to be saying, hey, you got to sacrifice this to the God. This God needs this. It's always how people interpret things. And it's never about being right or wrong. It's how we use our abilities to carry forward our progression in life. As humans, I should say.
That's the key. To make the full picture, that you need all the puzzle pieces. And all the puzzle pieces are a little different. And I think that's the key idea of individuation that coined by Carl Jung, is that each individual has particular superpowers that, see, this is why the society wants everybody a cookie cutter. Society wants everybody to be a carbon copy of the next person, just drones and machines. Meanwhile, everybody's got their own individual thing. Dude, I bet you the 10 best pole vaulters in the world have no idea that they are, because they've never tried it. You know, you got to try all kinds of different shit before you find out what it is you're good at, you know? And it takes a village, as they say, yeah, for a society to run fluently. And everyone talks about like the imitation of Christ. And the way Carl Jung puts it with his thing about individuation is you're not supposed to directly imitate what Christ did. You're supposed to find out what it is that awakens the Christ within you, because then you're contributing to society in a way that is truly selfless, you know? I found this section, by the way, if you want to hear this.
No, you know, it's funny that you bring up Christ, because I always talk about this a lot. You know, there's always arguing about who is this Christ. You know, people always arguing about, you know, the skin color, where he came from, what he looked like, you know, this, that, and the third. And to me, it's amazing to me, because they arguing about what he looked like. Why aren't you arguing about the shit that he told us to do right? All Jesus Christ ever wanted anybody to do was just to do the right thing. Treat your neighbor like you would want to be treated. Treat people with respect. Help people if they needed it. You know, don't judge others. Don't do this. He never had a hateful bone in his body. All he wanted was everybody to do, just to be okay. It's okay to forgive your enemy, you know? It's okay. It's not for you to forgive them. It's for you to forgive yourself.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's for yourself. And you,
Christ living in us today, discussing his color and features. That's idiot.
Man, it would blow my that right there tells me already that you don't even care about the good in people. You only care about the color and what they look like. You know, their appearance is what makes you worship them. And that's a sad way to think about things. I mean, why are you worried about whether this man was black, white, or whatever, when he was sitting up here telling people stop abusing children, stop abusing women? That's what you should be talking about. Stop focusing on the damn skin color. Focus on the good that he was talking about, because he never said anything bad. You know, he even questioned his own father, God himself. And a lot of people believe that him and God is one and the same, but he questioned God on the cross himself. You know what I'm saying? He questioned him, and that's a sin in itself. You know, let's not only forget that he also went to hell. So he knows what it is to go through hell, quote unquote, go through hell just to make it to heaven. Literally. He knows what it's like to go through the darkest moments of your life, and come out of it and go to heaven.
That's another question.
Hell, yo, that's crazy. You can't tell me that somebody was trying to break him. Because why would he need to go to hell? And why would somebody in the first place go to hell, take anybody from hell to bring them to heaven? So all this shit that they did in their physical life, they got accepted to heaven, even though they might have spent a little bit of time in hell. No, somebody did something wrong to a few individuals. And I look at it like this. Think about the judicial system of today. There are people spending time in prison right now for crimes that they didn't do. And there was enough evidence for them to sit there and stay in jail until they was proven not guilty. Or there are people in jail that's done a petty crime. And there are people out there abusing women and children and elderly, and they don't get nowhere near the time amount of people that they're, you know, the drug charges of marijuana and
or taxes,
or taxes and stuff like that. Like you telling me you sending people to jail for that? But you let, you know, these abusers walk around, and then you sit here and tell me what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus wouldn't let Jesus, you know, matter of fact, it's funny because I'm reading this book right now. Oxford Handbook of Religion, Religion and Violence, right? It's a thick ass book. I just started reading it. And I just passed the Christianity part. And this says in there that even though violence was not necessarily something that they wanted to do, it was necessary for their livelihood, right? Because they were being prosecuted for certain things. If you walked around that you was a Christian, you could have had your head on a pike. Why would a Christian at that time who was following Christ, where Christ told people, look, stop abusing women and children and the elderly, why would you put that person on a crucifix? And why would you put a person's head on a pike when they're telling other people not to abuse women and children and elderly? That's telling me something that you want people to be abused. Right. So go ahead, Brooke. I'm sorry. I can get on the tangent too.
No, one of my favorite things about Jesus is that, you know, he even says, you know, be angry, but sin not. So talking about, you know, the things in our society, he was like, it's okay to be angry. And I think that's an important thing, because sometimes I think we get angry and we don't know how to process it, and we almost feel bad for being angry. But anger it's just a feeling, just like anything else, and it's actually a secondary emotion, but that's a different topic. But I think that was a really interesting piece to what you're saying, Tyrone, too, is like Jesus said, be angry, but sin not. So that goes back to, what you brought up, Joy, about just, embodying that change and that positivity and that light and that goodness. And I think that's one of my favorite things that he taught.
Yeah, and you know what?
Important.
These two scriptures hit me hard. Matthew 10:34. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. And he had to fight against the people who were abusing women, children, and the elderly. You don't fight that with a discussion and a conversation. That's already gone. You know what I'm saying? That's already gone once you start affecting women, children, and the elderly, right?
Does it say that he
right
used
there?
The sword?
It doesn't say that he actually used the sword, but he brought it.
Right.
Meaning that sword represents war. Sword represents violence.
He had that
right?
motherfucker on him.
Yeah, so hey, it's like somebody walking around with a strap on their side of their hip, waiting for somebody to fuck around and find out. Right. That's what he was about.
They
you know what I'm saying? He let them know right there. Hey, look, I'm as nice as I can possibly be, but I'll flip these goddamn tables on you if you mess with me. And he did it. He did it.
Righteous
that's
anger.
Right. I always love telling people that. I'm like, don't forget, like Jesus was flipping tables. Like, it's okay to get mad,
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I say. If he can get mad, then I'm nowhere near on the level of that, because I'm not flipping no tables with no food on it. I'm not wasting no food. I'll take the food off first, and then I'll go flip the table. But I ain't flipping no, especially if it got some ribs or some chicken on it. Nah, I'm leaving that right there where it's at.
Man, if it's got that mac and cheese with the peas in the bottom, I'll flip that shit over, though. That's unnecessary. I don't know what they were doing.
But seriously, you know how pissed off you have to be to flip a table?
Yeah,
and these ain't no punk ass tables of 2025. These is hard,
it
tables
was IKEA.
This wasn't no cheap ass table.
Oak.
This is the oak or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Something that weighed like 300-400 pounds. You had to have some muscle to flip that. You know what I'm saying? So if you're gonna flip,
like
you can't act like you're gonna flip it. You can't act like you're gonna flip a table and don't finish it out. You know what I'm saying? You got to be really pissed off to lift something like that.
And that was the Pharisees, man. He didn't like what they were doing. But that sword thing reminds me of the definition of meek. He says the meek will inherit earth, and we think that meek equals weak. Maybe because it rhymes, I don't know. But meek in Greek sounds that tripped me up just now. A lot of eek words, but it's a man with a sword who keeps it sheathed. Not a weak person, but someone who has a sword but doesn't use it. It's like, that's real power. That's real strength right there,
Was there anything else that you wanted to actually talk about, Joey? Like specifically?
There is this section here that in this Talbot book that I can't keep to myself. I want to read it to you if you don't mind.
Nice. No, go for it.
This tripped me up pretty good the first time I read it, because the implications are staggering, and it seems like one of those things where you can acknowledge it coherently, consciously all day, but until one is able to process it psychologically, like in their subconscious mind, it doesn't do nothing. But so he's talking about the Vajrayana here. Recognizing that the Vajrayana Buddha seeks to control the reality structuring mechanism of the human consciousness, the mechanism which edits out the infinity of universes we could be experiencing. Almighty powers are shut in nature's cells. The role of the mystics since time immemorial has been to point this out. But so the laws of sleep, food, gravity, causes and effects are all so-called laws of nature, are laws for us only to the extent that they are believed. They are like grooves on a record, an infinity of interpreting universes. So it almost compares it to like grooves on a record. It's something that can exacerbate and get deeper within the coherent consciousness. But if you can break out of that, it creates an entirely different reality structure. And the way this is taken advantage of by the Vajrayana Buddhists is they call themselves atheists, even though they worship higher powers and gods. The reason they consider themselves atheists is because their image of God that they imagined it to be, Krishna, all these guys, they acknowledged that they were projections of their own psyche and therefore were real in the causal realms. And they maintain that this coherentness of imagining their gods was like a feedback loop that would create our reality and thus in turn would create that reality, which kind of makes sense if you consider that nothing can exist without its opposite. Every front has a back. The mountain is high because the valley is low. These guys were able to control reality by controlling their own minds, but sticking together with it. It almost seems like if you look at what the news and media is doing, well, since I can remember, they paint a picture in order for the human consciousness as a mass to imagine reality a certain way. Therefore, it does become that. If that's not black magic, I don't know what is. Because if you can get masses of people to believe a certain thing, it doesn't matter if it's a lie or if it's the truth. It doesn't matter. It becomes real whenever the collected consciousness believes it. Because human beings are not, despite us having all different superpowers, if you look at it from a sidereal point of view, zoom out, we're a moss on a rock. And whatever the shape of the rock is doesn't matter. And that's kind of the point, is that if you get enough people believing something, it becomes reality for everyone, no matter how far removed they are. That begs the question, why does the news constantly perpetuate fear above anything else? There's a lot of good things that happen in the world. I've never seen them on the news. It's almost like they are a loose mechanism itself, at the top of which I can't imagine what it would be, because what human being would want that for the rest of the human beings, you know?
Well, that's because who's in charge are not human beings of all of those
You forgot.
networks. And I used to, when I was in high school, I used to want to go into journalism. I was our news anchor for the school, and there's old videos of it on YouTube, but it's buried, so you'll never find it. But and then I realized like what the Mockingbird media is about, and I want to know parts of it. And it's interesting because if you look at who owns these companies, and you were talking earlier about how all of the alien life beings need to have something to sustain them. If you listen to CE5 experiencers, and what they say is that there's different types of beings: the Nordics, the Greys, the reptilians, and so on, and they each need something different. And I think it's like the reptilians or something who are in charge of a lot of these negative factions, I would say, that we have on our earth that are meant to control. And I think you're right. You never see anything good on the news. It's the same script. You can just flip the channel and it's going to be just slightly different, but they're all owned by the same people. So
Right.
yeah.
Who owns them?
Creates the same feelings. Creates the same
Exactly.
feelings.
Yeah, and that's why I say
Yeah.
you'd be so much happier if you just turn off the news, like, and just stay in reality and look around your own community. Again,
Right.
be the change that you want to see.
I get my news from memes and occult rejects. That's my
Me
media
too.
right there.
You know, I was going to answer your question, Brooke. You know, misery likes company. You know,
Yeah.
so those are the people that would do that. You know, somebody who has nothing to lose or wants to, or gets enjoyment out of seeing pain in others. You know, some people will sacrifice pain of themselves just so they can inflict pain on somebody else, just to see it. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy that people are like that. You know, energy vampires, for example, somebody that likes to suck out your good energy. You know what I'm saying? There are people out there who really hate themselves, so they want to make sure that other people hate themselves as much as they hate themselves, you know, and it's strange that it's like that.
No, absolutely. Because I think too, it helps keep people in that lower vibration, in that lower consciousness. So that way, if you're constantly worried in fear and anxiety, you can never think about creating. You don't have time to ponder. You know, you could create that next invention or that new thing that purifies water. You don't have time to think about any of that because you're living in that like lizard brain, fear based, low chakra vibe all of the time. And I think that, you know, like to your point, it's a way to control and inflict that pain on people so that way people don't achieve their entire potential.
Yeah. You don't have that chance to have an idea that like
Spot on.
doing something else.
See, this is why I don't ejaculate anymore. I don't need any energy vampires to be siphoning my energy. Nick.
Oh fuck.
I had to take your joke and I had to move it over here. I had to try it out. I'm sorry.
All right, it's okay.
But I think not only, Brooke, are you spot on with that, but it makes sense if you look at the schooling system. You know, the guy who invented the schooling system we have now, which wasn't long ago. I mean, this was like 1890s, that the dude was like, yo, we've got enough philosophers. We've got enough artists. People are making machines now, and we need workers to take on these machines so we can produce. So they designed school, which this is no secret. It's not even a conspiracy. The school was designed to be a factory, a pre-factory, because factories were new. And they're like, we got to fill this up with employees. We got to make money. And so schools stopped being to feed your potential, and they started being to get to the next class by the time the bell rings, or else there's repercussions, you know. And as you know, freedom of thought is completely prohibited in schools. You have to, I remember being in school and being taught about Freud, Sigmund Freud. And I was like, to my own teacher, I was like, how are you, of all people, buying into any of this? This man was a madman on cocaine, sex obsessed, wanted to bang his mom. And there's really problems. This is a psychological problem, if you think about it. He just happened to have the money, so he's eccentric instead of crazy. Meanwhile, Jung was completely ignored in school. And what does Jung teach? Well, to look within. So so when they want to push psychology, they got Sigmund Freud. That's their mascot. If they want to teach science, they quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, a man who is not a scientist, never has been, never touches a lab. But they won't talk about Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh, I love his stuff. I love his stuff.
Yeah, he's a scientist. He goes in and does science, and we're not taught about his work. We're taught about whatever Tyson is talking about, and I emphasize talking about. You know, he memorizes things and then bullies other scientists. You know, there have been scientists with breakthroughs who are afraid to come forward with their breakthroughs because they've seen what happens when Neil deGrasse Tyson mocks you on the news or on the media or on a talk show. Their careers plummet, whether they're right or wrong. It doesn't matter. If one of these rock star scientists, look, if you say name 3 scientists to any average person, they're going to go Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and maybe Stephen Hawking. Like, that is so bizarre to me that no one can name real scientists. And it's boggling to me. So, I mean, that's just science class. But then
I can. Georgie Lemaitre,
yes.
Fred Hoyle. You know who Georgie Lemaitre is?
I'm not familiar.
What about Fred Hoyle?
No, I'm not familiar.
That's where the Big Bang Theory term actually comes from. So Georgie Lemaitre is the guy who actually came up with the primeval atom theory, which is basically how the universe started from, you know, an explosion of some sort. Fred Hoyle is a guy that tried to, he came up with the term Big Bang to discredit Georgie Lemaitre. and
Is
his
that
primeval
so?
atom theory. Yeah. So when somebody says the Big Bang theory, or if you know the show The Big Bang, it came from an individual named Fred Hoyle. And this was around like 1949, 1950 or something like that on the BBC channel. And
I love
he
that there's a
said,
little spicy drama there for the
yeah, and you know, it's always, and that's what I was saying earlier, it's always going to be there. You can't be in this field or any field where it comes into research, encountering other people, where it's going to be what you call spicy, where it's going to be, you know, arguments. You just have to learn how to look past that. I know I've read a lot of books from Plato. I actually read all the Plato's books that are available to the public, and in his books, if you read his books, he literally tells you that individuals, like how we are having discussions right now over streaming online, they would go to their inner cities or a location that they would for debates, and they would go in there and argue, call each other stupid, dumbasses, and all kinds of stuff, right? And they would say their points and all this other stuff, and at the end of the day, they would go back home, and then the next day they would go back out there and redo it over and over again. Right. Yeah. And they knew how to separate it. And you can tell in the books that, like, sometimes, especially with Socrates and stuff like that, it's interesting that you bring up the word demon, because I don't look at demons like other people look at. Ever since I read Plato's book, what is it called? Oh, shit. Yeah, I think it's Cratylus. Cratylus, okay. Cratylus. And it's with Socrates, about how he was talking with Socrates, or how Socrates was talking and having a debate. And in there, it actually says that according to them, the Greeks, Plato and Socrates and them, demons were considered, and they were also known as daemons, you know that, they were considered wise men who died honorably. Okay. These were men who were wise, or men who died honorably. Yes. And I shared on Twitter X all the time when somebody brings up the word demon. I took a picture of the page and all that other stuff. And it's just interesting to me to know that the Greeks at one time considered them wise men. Because when you look at, when you was talking about just about 45 minutes ago, you had mentioned that the serpents were knowledge givers, basically. In so many words, that's what you said. Right. And if you really look at it, every serpent that we have in history, from the Garden of Eden, you know, the forbidden fruit, to the serpents coming from the waters, from the doggone tribe, right? The reptilians, or whatever people want to call them. These are the individuals that was giving knowledge to us. Prometheus, when he gave fire to us, the best technology that we can have as man is fire. If you look at that, the other guys didn't want us to have that. They wanted us to live naked and cold. Think about that for a second. Yeah, right. God had a Garden of Eden where he only allowed people to wear their birthday suits, meaning that he wanted to see everything. And he wasn't the all-knowing God either. And I tell you why he wasn't the all-knowing God, because when Adam and Eve ate from that tree of knowledge and they heard God walking through the Garden of Eden, what was the first thing they went to go do? They went to go hide behind a tree or bush. Now, when they went to go hide in the tree or bush, or behind the tree or the bush, God asked them, who told you that you were naked? If you're the all-knowing God, then ain't nobody got it. That's not a question you have to ask. You would have known that as soon as it happened. There's a lot in the story, dude. There's a lot of holes in the story. It's like Swiss cheese, brother. You can't figure out which fucking hole is going to be next in the slice of cheese that you get. You don't know if you're going to have a big ass hole in the middle, or if you're going to have these little small cheeses, holes everywhere.
It's always been confusing that when Cain was banished from, his parents, he killed Abel. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to go into the city then and get a wife and start a family. But everybody hated him. Like, who are these people? So it's like, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense there. And of course, a lot of it is allegory. But I mean, for what it's worth, anything that's meant to be literal is very strange. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. And to be frank, the entire Old Testament, God was not only a dick, but kind of a perv. It's really weird.
It's crazy you say that, because I still can't understand how some people, and this might be a little bit touchy for some people, but I just don't understand how some people can say that it's okay for what God did to the Virgin Mary. And I'm just going to leave that at there.
Well, you've piqued my curiosity then.
The Virgin Mary was 14, 15 years old when she had Jesus. That's a minor.
That's right.
That's a minor.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
well, she didn't have
now,
sex.
The all powerful, the all knowing chose a minor. That doesn't make sense. Why couldn't he wait till she was at least an adult?
that's very interesting. I've never thought of
That's
that
weird.
before.
Oh.
Damn. Immaculate conception is in a lot of different cultures, but a child, yeah, a 14-year-old girl she ain't even got the titties to breastfeed at that point. Like, how does that even work? That's interesting.
You know, and I say that because I read this book called The City of God from Mary of Agreda. These books from the 1600s, 1700s. It's supposed to be her, it's her divine intervention with the Virgin Mary herself. Basically, the Virgin Mary came to her and basically gave her all this information. So it's supposed to be a history of the Virgin Mary from the time that she was chosen by God to be the carrier of Jesus all the way to the end of the crucifixion of Jesus. And it's supposed to be a life story. And in that book, it says in there that Jesus chose Mary before Mary was even created. He knew what Mary was going to be, just like how he knew how we were going to be, right? He chose her for a specific reason. She was supposed to be his wife after she left Earth, because she was supposed to be, next to God, the throne. That's why she's known as the Queen of Heaven. How can you be a queen of heaven if you don't have a king? Her king was God. And this is the same individual as Ishtar and Inanna.
Yeah.
You look at Ishtar and Inanna in the Mesopotamian text, they both are also known as the Queen of Heaven.
Yeah.
So
that's wild.
And he in the book, it says that and I did a podcast episode on it. I'm going to go over and do it again. I got more information from it, but he chose her for a specific reason. The timing, the place, the how, all that, right? And remember when I was telling you about how Jesus was upset about how simple fact that he was tired of people abusing women, children, and the elderly. Well, he found out, because just to keep it simple, Mary worked in a temple when she was young. She got pregnant in that temple. Okay, nobody knows exactly by who. They say it's God. That's their gateway, right? Saying God is the one. The Immaculate Conception is on God. But the thing is that she worked at a temple. At that time frame, every child had to work in a temple of some sort, either by different things they had to do. But she was when she got pregnant, of course, the whole story came up. And even Joseph, he didn't even know she was pregnant. He didn't know she was pregnant until she started showing. He wanted to leave her.
Right.
Because,
I can't say I don't blame him,
Yeah, so and that's why I say, Jesus was upset, because he was really telling people stop abusing, women, children, and elderly. And it's because he found out what was happening to his mother.
Right.
When she was at that age.
Right.
And he knew. You got to also remember, who did Jesus hang out with? He didn't hang out with engineers,
right?
People who had their shit together. He hung out with people who were prostitutes and alcoholics and thieves. And that's who he hung out with.
Interject real quick. Just the people in the chat mentioning Amin Hillman, just don't. But sorry, I had to get that in there. She's a shock rocker. He's out to shock people with words.
I can't yeah. You know what? Because I guarantee you the Occult Rejects will never come out of his fucking mouth. So I don't want people, I'm not going to talk about him either. So.
Yeah, I didn't even want to mention his name, but just
that guy's actually, you know what? Straight up, that guy's actually asked me about 5 fucking times to come on the show.
Yeah, he's a nonsense individual. He's proof that you can say very shocking things and just get a lot of attention. And I think it's dying down pretty quick for him. But
you come out and say you used to work for the CIA. What the fuck?
Yeah, yeah, this weird dude. But no, the Jesus archetype with what you're saying is, I think it's spot on. But it's another one of those things that it's uncomfortable to think about. But you're right. Jesus did not hang out with the rich. He did not hang out with good-to-do people with nice shoes. He hung out with the underbelly of society, and that's where he found company. And he made it clear too that his God preferred the felon who became righteous versus the person who was raised right, maintaining their righteousness, which translating today is not such a shocker, because what is a more inspiring story? A man who graduates college and then becomes a CEO, or the felon who gets out of prison and then goes on to become the CEO because he had to climb some really difficult hills? That could be a movie, that latter one, you know? So that's that. God and Jesus, as a reflection of whatever his God was, preferred the meek, the people who had it harder than anybody else, you know, which it's a weird thing to relate to David Goggins, but that's kind of the philosophy there, is that if you are in a position, born in a position where you have to, life is going to be harder for you than it is for this guy, then do it. Do that hard shit, whatever it takes, and surpass that person, because that is a story that you cannot fake. That's a story that you cannot, that's alchemy right there. That's what the real hero's journey is all about, is going from these low places, from the valley to the mountain. If you're born on the mountain, you don't have a story. So really, you don't really have a soul in whatever regard of the word soul that you would. I'm not talking about, like, what do they call it? PNGs or something like that, whatever they say. I don't believe in those. But what I'm saying, is, metaphorically speaking, is that the man who has to work and sacrifice and himself to become closer to God is the real inspiring story, which Jesus talked about. But not only did he talk about, but he embodied that to the fullest extent. People are always confused about the crucifixion. And even you'll see a lot of comedians talk about how weird that story is, that he died for our sins or whatever. And they're like, how does that equate? How does that work? It is very confusing if you're just looking at the canonical scriptures. But man, if you bring the Gnostic scriptures into it, and we are assuming that there are forces at work that wants to digest our suffering, well, the only way to save an earth realm, humanity, whatever it is, would be to absorb all of that suffering yourself into one lifetime. That way you can actually give people a chance, because original sin isn't something that humans are guilty of. Original sin is something that we are born into, not because of Adam and Eve, but because we have flesh and blood and we have to survive here. We can't just relax up like in the pleroma, where these aeons and these entities, they live, and they can live out their sheer creative force with intentions we can't even imagine, so complex that it leaves us in the dust. Because no matter how creative we are in this realm, we're still bound to a body that needs to be sustained, that requires sustenance, that has to eat, has to sleep, it has to work in order to survive. The Gnostic scriptures, I don't think they're not anti-Christian. In fact, I think they're preliminary to the canon.
Well, they should definitely be included. They should definitely be included.
Yeah.
Yo, Mary's book is off the hook. That one's pretty wild too.
I want to look at the Council of Nicaea's edits and see, because if you go to Oxford in England, they have the records there that the council, and dude, me and you should go up there for real. And with your travels, like, I'd love to join you and look at there, because no one cares. Nobody looks for these things, but the canon that was decided for the Bible was decided by the Council of Nicaea, and those dudes kept record. They kept tight records and notes of why they choose certain books over other books and why they made edits. For example, whenever Christ showed up one day, because there's this demon that John, or who he couldn't, I'm gonna get the name wrong, John couldn't exorcise this particular demon out of this dude, and it says, oh, this particular demon can only be exorcised through prayer. He has to pray. It was not prayer originally. It was fasting. And then the Council of Nicaea changed it from fasting to prayer to make it holy, because they are like, the reason for it, we don't know. But I bet you if you look it up, they're like, this doesn't make sense. We're just not going to eat. Doesn't make sense. Fast forward to today, we understand that we have gut biome. We have like bacteria in our guts that controls our appetite, our moods, our dopamine. We have two brains.
Out, right? To think about.
Yeah. So Jesus was a physician saying, you got parasites, bitch. You got to fast to get rid of those things because they're making you a crazy person. And I know a lot of guys eating TV dinners every day who could use a little exorcism themselves. For real, plastic.
Well, when you talk about that, that's really interesting. When you look into the types of food that they talk about in the Bible, when they're out in the desert, how they find manna and honey and milk, and what it really is raw milk. It's not the pasteurized milk that we drink today. When you look at the foods that they were eating in the Bible and the foods that are mentioned and how many times they're mentioned, to your point with fasting and resetting that gut biome, it's really interesting. Honey is one of the best antibacterial, antiviral, almost like, I mean, it just has so many benefits to it, right? And it's fermented and all the benefits of fermented food. I've been drinking my kombucha while we're talking. So I love that.
Dude, milk and honey is like is a cornerstone, and especially when you consider breast milk. Breast milk, it like, I forgot exactly how it goes, but it finds out what the baby needs. So whenever the baby is breastfeeding, there's an exchange in the saliva with her nipple, and then her DNA picks up on what the baby needs, and then her body literally produces in that milk exactly what it is that baby needs. And what are we doing instead? We're feeding our babies lead and formula, some kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all. Meanwhile, the female breast literally creates a specific formula to that individual baby. And we're ignoring a lot of those things. And if you go to buy honey at the supermarket, it ain't honey. You have to turn the damn thing around and find the one on the back that says ingredients, honey. It's like maple syrup at this point. It ain't. It's sad. I wonder what manna was.
Yeah, that is really.
I can tell you. I already can tell you.
Tell me up, bro.
What was it?
I was talking about this the other day. So when you read the Bible, manna, we know that is supposed to help sustain the life of the Israelites who traveled to 40 years or whatnot, right? And what's interesting about them is that when you look up the word manna in Strong's Concordance, right? If you go in there and look at the Strong's Concordance, you will see that manna means man. It doesn't mean anything else like bread or something like that. If you go to Strong's Concordance and you type in manna, it means man, M-A-N. So that's pretty interesting.
Oh, I don't like where this is going. Last time I got milk from
I remember you showed that shit one time, actually. I forgot all about that. Yeah, that was weird. I think he pulled it up online, too.
Yep, I sure did. Yep.
It sounds like cannibalism.
That's what I'm saying. Just think about that.
Or sperm. I don't know which was worse.
Yeah. I was just thinking the same shit.
I always thought about like the mushrooms or whatever. I know that there was a lot of mushroom literature and a lot of mushroom iconography back then, but manna wasn't described in any way, shape, or form like a mushroom. But I know that the mushroom iconography goes back like a very long ass time. People equate it to like the Garden of Eden and stuff like that, but it's a good question though. He kind of disappeared, but I want to know what's going on with the manna thing. Oh, there he is.
No, I'm here. I had dropped my earbud on one of my earbuds, but
so what's the interpretation there? Like, why were they sustained? They're eating man, like
that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I wanted to know what manna was, right? Like, if anybody that knows me knows that I want to know the origins of everything, especially when it comes to words. I literally have a dictionary, etymology dictionary, and all this stuff. I want to know what the meaning of the words were. So during my research, everybody's like, "Oh, we don't know what manna is." Blah blah blah. Manna, we don't know what it is. We can't figure it out. Blah blah blah. We know it's a bread-like substance. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, in those times, bread-like substance meant food. Is bread, instead of using the word food like we would today, they would just say bread, right?
Right. Right.
So that I understand where they got that from. So what I did was I went back to the origins of the text, the Hebrew, right? Ancient Hebrew. And when you go to ancient Hebrew and the Aramaic, and you go to the Greek Septuagint or the Greek text is basically a translation from the Aramaic and Hebrew text, right? So, and they have what's called the Strong's Concordance. So this is every word that you can find in the Bible that has a meaning to it, a true meaning to it. It's just basically the etymology of the Bible, basically, right? So what I did was I went to the Strong's Concordance and I typed in manna. You can go to BibleHub.com or org, I think it is. I think it's BibleHub.com. Let me go check real quick. But anyway, you can go to the Bible Hub and if you type in manna, right? It's BibleHub.com. If you type in manna or in the Strong's Concordance, you can go to the Strong's Concordance too. If you type in manna, you will see that it literally says M-A-N, man. It was man. So every time they put in the word manna, instead of read manna, you would read man. So when they say God supplied, the Israelites with manna, they supplied them with man.
Yeah.
And this is not me saying that.
Right.
That's why I said when I wrote my book, it was the origins of everything. What does the actual words mean? If I was to go and linguistically translate this into the understanding of the language that I can understand, which is English, I would get a dictionary. I would get a transliteration. I would get the pictographic scripts. I would get everything that I possibly can, and I would go to the origins of what that word meant. And I'm telling you, look up the word manna, you're going to see that it was man. And this is not even me just saying it. This is actually what these people who linguistically translated the text for themselves. Right. And I'm just going off of what they're saying. So if you're telling me manna is man, then I'm only going to assume that though they were eating humans at that time. It only makes sense. I mean, and if I'm wrong, then tell me, why does the Strong Concordance say that manna means man? And then we can go from there. Right. But that means that person that wants to prove me wrong, they're going to have to go through all those translations that those people did for those hundreds of years, right, and sit there and counter it. And they can't.
M-A-N-A, right?
M-A-N-N-A.
Okay, 2 N's. This is fascinating, though. I want to see.
Pulled it up, I think, last time.
Yeah, I'm about to pull it up right now just so you can see it. Because
I believe you, by the way. I'm curious into delving into it myself. But okay, so I got this Bible that's got a dictionary in the back. Manna's not in here. It's just got the word man.
Well.
Yeah, because it's manna, man.
Right.
Now here we go. I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up right now. Look, and this is the Strong's Concordance right here. So anybody that wants to take the time out of their day, they can read it right here. So Strong's Concordance, results for manna, original words, 2 lexicon words, man, manna.
Damn.
It is man, for they wist not know what it is. It was the name 3, the name there of man, and it was like coriander seed white in the pot, and put on an omer full of man therein, and lay it upon before thee. Children of Israel did eat man 40 years until they came. Replace manna with man. That's all you gotta do. There's nothing at all beside. No, there's nothing.
People.
Yeah, look, there is nothing at all beside this manna. Not replace manna with man. There is nothing at all besides this man before our eyes. Another one. And the man was as coriander seed, and the color of thereof as upon the camp in the night, the man fell upon it. This just replace manna with man. And this is not me saying that. If I was going to translate it, I would go from manna to man.
Makes you think about there's a part in the OTO initiations where I think you're actually kind of stumbling upon the camp in the night. It's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, so that's why I always say, anybody that wants to counter what I say, all you got to do is just give me the text that says otherwise. The text that people are going to use when they translate the information, because everybody who translates the Bible from Hebrew to Aramaic, Hebrew and Aramaic to the Greek text, guess what they're going to use? The Strong's Concordance. This is not for debate. It's not. This is not for anybody to sit here and say, well, I don't believe this shit. Well, then tell me your expertise. Show me how you can translate this stuff. Then come back and talk to me. Show me, because guess what? This is what's written in their text. This is what's written in the Bible. This is the words that are used. If I go around and telling people that the Israelites were eating humans and man for those 40 years, they look at me crazy. But then when I go and explain to them that manna means man, according to the Strong's Concordance, they still look at me crazy because they don't want to believe that. Now, that's your feelings and beliefs. That's not mine. All I want to know is what the hell manna meant, and I found it. And anybody that tells you from this point on that they don't understand where manna comes from, they don't want you to know that they were practicing cannibalism. And this is not me assuming anything at all. This is me going to the actual translations that they use to translate these texts and just applying the words. If I take every word that says manna in the Bible and apply the word man to it, you'll get a whole different view of it. Right. Because when you look at manna, you're going to be like, well, shit, everybody says we don't know what it is. And you're going to be like, oh, it's a bread-like substance. It was food for the people. Yeah, well, guess what? Indigenous people around the world were practicing cannibalism.
It seems to be one of these age-old things that happens where we say it isn't because it just can't be. Like if we come across something and it's like, well, this is what it says, but there's just no way. So we'll leave it as a mystery. And that's across the board with religious scholars, scientists. They do it all the time. This thing where they find something new or old and they're like, well, this is what it looks like, but we know that it can't be. So moving on, like the Mars mysteries, for example, they see these things on Mars, but they know, well, that must be an anomaly because it can't be. So they just change the control and then they move on with whatever it is that does make sense to us. That's not science, that's dogma.
Yeah, somebody said in the comments, they said, keep reading it, replacing it with man makes no sense. I believe they were eating people too. Not everything is going to make sense, when you replace man with manna, right? And the reason why is because if you know how the texts were recorded back then, they were recorded on different things like cuneiform tablets, they were in depictions, cylinder seals and stuff like that. A lot of these cuneiform tablets are broken up. Like if you ever seen a Holy Bible, a cuneiform that has a scripture written on it. It's not like you can grab a book and it has or a piece of paper and there's nothing missing. I tell people this all the time. 3,000 years from now, I can take my book, right? I can tear out 100 pages of this book, right? And then I can do a revised version, right? In order to understand what I wrote in the first book, you will have to read the revised version to understand what I put in it. As long as I put the same information that I said that I'm revising in this book, meaning that if I tear out these 100 pages in here that I want to revise for whatever reason, if I'm doing a revised version, I would have to include that in my revised version to show people, hey, this is what I possibly got wrong, or this is what I possibly need to work on, and so on and so forth. It's no different than the Epic of Gilgamesh. Right. When they put that story together, they didn't put that story together because of one tablet. They used tablets from all around Mesopotamia that had increments like words in one place and another words in different places, and they just basically took their understanding and put it into a book format. It's no different than when people write about history today. We all take a little bit of our understanding from different places and, do our due diligence and share what we've learned and what we know and stuff like that. But that doesn't make that information is accurate. And that's why I tell people, for me, when people say the Bible's, if you keep reading it, like this individual said, if you keep reading it, it doesn't make sense. Well, which version of it that doesn't make sense to you are you reading? Are you reading the King James Version? Are you reading the New International Version? Are you reading the Geneva Version? Which one are you picking? Because the King James Version might not make sense, but then if you go to the New Jerusalem Bible Version, that might make sense because it's interpreted different and written different, right? If you got the Geneva Version, which is the oldest version that was for the printed version, and versus the King James Version, it's going to be different, right? It's not going to make sense because everybody used their own different words. And that's what makes me kind of upset about religion in the aspect is they have different versions of the Bible. There should only be one version with the same exact wording and everything. So that way we're not confused and we're looking like the Tower of Babel, right? We're confused on what it says, right? And if we take and you know what? I don't even think you can take the Bible and have one version. And the only reason why is because it's in Arabic and Aramaic. And those are two different cultures also. Those people are living two different ways. So you can't, right? And not only that, I guarantee you, if us four in here, if we decided to write a book on the same subject, we would have a whole different freaking view on these subjects, right?
Right.
And it's not until somebody picks up our books and they say, hey, well, I like this person's version more than I like that person's version. Brooke's version makes way more sense than Rebirth. Rebirth is a fucking dumbass. No, I ain't reading that shit. And that's how the world goes. And then you got two people who are fighting over two people who understood the Bible differently because of their own experience. The Bible is about experience within yourself. It tells you all these stories that gives you an idea of what it's like to be human. That's the perfect example. God has a personality just like every human on this planet. He can be evil. He can be loving. He can be hateful. He can be loving. He can be ignorant. He can be loving. It is all on the love part can be there, but guess what? Love is subjective. And that's why you have people, stuck in relationships that don't matter.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that the Bible's, any version of the Bible we have came from fragments. I mean, if you just look at the pictures of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I mean, it was in pieces, dude. So to put that together coherently means filling in a lot of blanks. And if you get like an honest copy of like the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll see parentheses everywhere, brackets everywhere, where they're filling in words that just weren't there. They have to assume something, or else you've got nothing to read. One of them that pissed me off a little bit recently was they're in the Gospel of Mary, which is a Gnostic. It's non-canonical, but it talks about Jesus loved her so much that he kissed her on the mouth. And everyone repeats that and repeats it and repeats it. And we run with it. And that's the story now. It turns out it says Jesus loved her so much that he kissed her on there's nothing there. It's a fragment. It's ripped at that spot. The word mouth is not actually there. But in order to have a text, they have to put a word in there.
It's a word to create the narrative. And this is a good example. Someone who knows to witness. This person, and is in the comments, they said they ate whatever from heaven, jackass. That's the goddamn translation for manna in Exodus. Never denied that. That is the translation. But see, this is where people don't pay attention to what is being said to them, and they have a narrative and an understanding that they don't even comprehend themselves. And I'll give you a perfect example. When that person said that in the comments, someone who knows to witness, all I said was, if you take manna and look up the strong concordance of what it meant, it means man, right? And that right there is all I said. That's as accurate as anybody that knows anything. So my point is that calling somebody a jackass or calling somebody an idiot because they shared something shows you that they don't really care to understand the truth. Because if you look at the word manna, like I said, I'm gonna repeat it again. If you look up the word manna on the Strong's Concordance, which I actually brought up, you will see that it's man. There's no argument of that. Anything else after?
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, it could be referring to the Adam Cadmus, basically the oversoul of man. Yeah. That's what shape we in the Gnostic Gospels. It says that the reason we are human in this form is because we are a reflection of the Adam Cadmus, which is a celestial body. That is the shape of our solar system, that we don't see it as a human form because here in 3D, it's a shadow of that over form that our solar system actually is and makes copies of. Therefore, the Adam Cadmus is the shape of man. Man is made in his image or whatever.
In the image, yeah, exactly. No, and this is what I love. This is what I love. And we're coming up to the 2-hour mark, so I know it's going to cut short.
Yeah, I'd like to wrap
the same person.
Nick's
the
like,
same person.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I seen that. Yeah, the same person said, you said all of them were manna translated man, you arrogant retard. That's what the person said. Now, like I said, going back, and I'll leave it at this, Nick, going back to, if you look at the Strong's Concordance, manna means man. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I say people have to understand what the actual words mean, not what your feelings are. I'm not saying anything going against that. All I'm saying is manna means man, and that's it.
To be able to move forward with the mystery, we first have to accept what the definition meant in the first place, and then we can extrapolate. So like you're saying, you're not, well, we're kind of hinting at cannibalism, and then I was kind of hinting at semen, but we were both kind of joking around. But if you put those jokes aside and say, okay, well, this is what that definition meant, verify it, and that's what it says, well, then we can start our serious speculations about the Adam Cadmus or the Oversoul or the soul, or these other forms, instead of just being like, well, the fragments is gone, it's missing, we don't know what manna is, it's a mystery, and then move on with our day. We have to first accept what that is first, then we can move on with some kind of speculation, as to what it literally meant. But yeah, that's interesting though. Spicy comments today, huh?
Yes. Whatever. I don't take the Bible literal anyway, so it doesn't apply to me.
That's right.
It don't apply to me either, because I don't read so many different versions. I don't know which one is the most accurate at this point.
Yeah.
All right. Joey. You know what? We'll have everybody else plug stuff before we wrap it up. Brooke, let everybody know what's up when you're speaking and where again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for having me tonight. This has been great. It was so nice to meet you, Joey.
Thank you.
You can find me at Charlie's Beyond Belief Expo in Fort Myers, Florida on October 18th. I'll be speaking there. Occult Rejects will also have a booth. Come hang. It's going to be an amazing event. And in the meantime, if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast, on YouTube, Dark Florida, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Tyrone, let them know what's going on, my man.
Hey, this was a good show, Joey. I really appreciate it. Nick, thank you for letting me come on. Everything that you can find on me is on rebirthoftheword.com. I love sharing what I've learned, what I've read, and what I've researched. I don't go beyond that. I just share what the actual text say that I took the time to read and go from there. I have a Rumble account, which I'm building my own, quote unquote documentary of places that I've actually visited. Got tired of the AI stuff and all that. And I'm supposed to be going on some trips with Nick. I'm looking forward to these trips. I'm definitely going to make them. I've already looked into them. So if you want to speak to me, me and Nick probably going to have some interviews out there. I'm definitely going to bring my equipment. We're going to do some stuff. So yes. That's it, man. I really appreciate this, Nick. This was actually, this was a good show.
Yeah, definitely. I always like getting Joey on, man. It's always great stuff. Joey, please let everybody know what's going on, my man.
Well, just besides Library of the Untold on YouTube, which is actually, I got an easier way now. If you go to libraryoftheuntold.com, just that simple, all of my episodes are literally in order from newest to oldest. And I found that to be, everyone's always in the comments like, when did you refer to this video, or what was the one on plasma that you did, blah, blah. So I decided to just put them all in order from newest to oldest on libraryoftheuntold.com. And with that, you get a bonus because all of my music videos and lyric videos are also right there. It's just all in one spot.
Awesome. Thank you very much, my man. I really appreciate it. And
always a pleasure.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and thank you. There was some new people too that I said that I saw that came over here from your channel or whatever, they were from you. So that's what's up. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm starting to make a habit now is every time it's a coincidence, maybe a synchronicity, but every time we hit each other up, I happen to be going into a new subject. So it's like I get to practice here first before I go to make an actual video on it. So
that's
hear it here first.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, no, I remember you did that last time too. That's funny.
Right.
I said, you got anything going on? You're like, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, perfect timing always. But yeah, thank you again all, and thank you everybody in the chat. That is what's up. And yeah, until the next one, everybody be well. Later.
Bye.